Imagine having the time and money to follow your passions and live life on your own terms. Welcome to Podcasting Mastery, where you'll learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle. Let's grab a cool tropical drink and then join James, Kimberly, and the Turtle in the Secret Beach Hut Studio.
Yes, this is James Martell along with Kimberly Juchnowski.
Hello.
And we are again tucked into the Secret Beach Hut Studio, and we are so glad you've decided to join us. This week, we will be continuing our conversation about developing a lifestyle business so we can all spend less time doing business and more time enjoying our families, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to us most. It's for these reasons we continue to focus on strategies for both developing a passive monthly income stream and passive ways of developing new clients and customers for your business. Kimberly, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, James?
Hey, I'm doing very well, thank you. And I do understand we have a very special guest joining us today.
We do indeed. Today we have Ali Shapiro joining us. Ali is the co-host of the Insatiable Podcast, a podcast designed to help those looking to lose weight in a healthy way. Ali and her co-host Juliet bring holistic expertise to transform the nutrition and fitness conversation. No calories in, calories out here, but breakthroughs and results guaranteed.
Wonderful. Now, why don't you go ahead and push the button, play us a little bit of music to set the tone for the show, which of course is to work less, earn more, and swim with the turtles. Now, Ali Shapiro is a health coach, pioneering a new way to approach food, health, and weight loss. She combined her background in functional medicine and holistic nutrition to create an innovative health coaching method, Truce with Food, while at the University of Pennsylvania earning her master's degree in the field of coaching. Ali, welcome to Podcasting Mastery.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, before we dig in, let's talk about you. Before we dig into talking about the podcast, let's learn a little bit about your personal story, if you would, and just kind of give us your background.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always where do we start the narrative, right? But I think the turning point was about 14 years ago. I was living in Philadelphia and was really struggling with my weight. And I was hoping it was my thyroid, which now I'm glad it wasn't, but at the time I was. And I was waiting for the doctor to come in and give me my results. And I took my medical files, which I had never looked at before, right? Like, even though they're yours, it feels like, what are they saying about me? And I basically took the file and I looked at it, and I had this moment where, I looked at the file and I had asthma as a kid. I had cancer as a teenager. I had struggled with acne, allergies. I had been diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome and depression. And I was there for my weight, which looking back, I cringe on, but that was what was most important to me. And I looked at that and I was like, wow, I have defined healthy as not having cancer, but I am not well. Like, there's something here. And the doctor came in and told me my thyroid results were fine. And she gave me a recipe that she told me to exercise more. And she gave me a recipe that had Splenda, which is an artificial sweetener, which actually this week in the news it's been linked to blood cancers like leukemia. But I had known that before because of my background in cancer and studying. I was trying to be healthy. And there was something about that recommendation that I was like, wow, I'm not going to get my answers here.
No kidding.
And I walked out feeling really hopeless and really confused and lost. And one of my favorite quotes by Wendell Berry, who's a writer and farmer, says that, sometimes, and I'm paraphrasing here, but often when we don't know which way to go, that's when the real work begins. And I basically found functional medicine and realized that a lot of my issues were connected to my gut health, which had been compromised when I went through chemotherapy. And so as I started to heal my gut and realized I was gluten intolerant, which was also explained my asthma as a child, everything cleared up. And it was so empowering. I was like, how did I not know this? How did I do this? And so that really, but then I started seeing clients on the side. I was in the corporate world. And I was like, maybe I'm just a fluke. This might have just been me. And I started to notice these really simple changes helped other people. But then what I also discovered is as I started my own business, I started my sugar habit and my emotional eating I hadn't worked through it completely. And so But I started to realize this parallel of as I became more like boss in my business, I became more the boss of my sugar habit. And I noticed the same parallel with my clients. We would talk about nutrition for 4 or 5 sessions, but then really get into where do they need to take more control in their lives. And so that's what led me back to Penn to say, what's going on here? Because everyone was making different changes, different things were happening, but I knew there was something that was consistent. And so that's what I went back to grad school to study. And that's how I ended up with my own business, I guess you could say.
Excellent. That's a great story. So you do have an established health coaching business. Now, what inspired you to launch the Insatiable Podcast?
Yeah. So I wish that there was, so part of the normal nutrition conversation these days is very judgmental. It's very black and white. It's vegan versus paleo. It's exercise more, eat less. All of these things that we know aren't true anymore. But the power of story is very, very powerful. So I wanted a medium that gave you the length to talk about the nuance. I've done TV, I've done, magazines, online and print, and they're great, but you don't really get the bandwidth or the space to talk about what really needs to be talked about. So that was one of the main, from an educational standpoint. In my business, my clients tend to be highly educated, but there still needs to be even more education. And it can't be done in 3 tips. It can't be done in clickbait. And so that was one of the drivers. I also am extremely extroverted and I'm by myself. I love my clients, yet like a lot of the times, they're doing most of the talking. And I really feel isolated often. I moved from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, haven't found a lot of people yet. And Juliet was actually a former client of mine, and we see eye to eye on, she does a lot of training, but she also understands nutrition and the emotional component. So I wanted to collaborate with someone that I really respected and admired. And so those were the 2 big things. And also as a kid, I always wanted to just be like, have my own talk show because I just wanted to ask people questions. Like I'm that, why are you framing it that way? So those 3 things came together. And that's why I had approached Juliet about starting the podcast.
I have a granddaughter. She's 5, and that was a perfect impression of her. Why? I should put a microphone in her face. It'd be hilarious. In fact, you've inspired me.
I'm still that way.
How did you learn about podcasting? What led you to podcasting? You've got a bit of a background by the sounds of it in broadcasting from our earlier discussion, but what led you into actually, okay, I'm going to start a podcast?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, my husband is a huge podcaster or listener, a huge podcast listener. And he was always saying, and I think from a business perspective, my challenge was if people came out to hear me speak or meet me in person, they were like, oh my God, this girl knows what she's talking about. This is not the typical health coach. And so part of me in trying to get my name out there more and change this conversation was one of the big impetuses Carlos, who's my husband, told me this would be great for you. You're great in conversation. You ask good questions. And from coaching, if you're going to hire a coach, you really want to know their mindset and how they approach life in a way, which you can often tell in conversation. So I was simultaneously had heard him telling me that for a while. I'm working on a book as well about Truce with food and how the method itself. And so having a podcast platform is a huge, if you do that, you're going to be looked at publishers in a different light than if you don't have one. And then trying to replicate, how can I get this education or I can't tour the country constantly doing speaking events and stuff like that. So to me, I think all of those things came together to be like, okay, let's just do this. And I had a microphone because I run my Truce with Food program. Everything's virtual. And I already had a fancy mic. My husband's a huge tech guy. So I had the mic, and then I knew that, I had the call recording service as well. So I was like, let's just try this. And I tend to not overanalyze, but I want to study, I want to research, I want to maximize everything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I just want this to be fun. Like, it's going to be Juliet and I chatting. And I also was hoping to meet more people in the health field. And I was like, oh, people like going on people's podcasts. And then I just get to ask why. Right. So all those things came together to actually make me do it, really like do it and carve out time for it as well.
So you have a coaching business, you're writing a book. So here's my next why question is from a business perspective now, take us through your rationale as to why you started the Insatiable Podcast.
There's two answers. One is I just wanted to do some type of marketing that was fun. I do like writing and I do enjoy that stuff. But to me, I feel like my strength is in the conversation. So from a marketing standpoint, I thought, this is something that, especially a lot of my clients are multitaskers, they're traveling. They're not online a lot. Mm-hmm. They may be on Facebook here and there, but they tend to be super busy and they're not in the entrepreneurial world. I feel like the entrepreneurial world, everyone's online all the time, but my clients aren't. And so to me, the business rationale was, okay, I'm meeting my clients where they are in their own environment. And they can multitask. It meets all those purposes. And it gives them the educational standpoint. I really didn't think about how am I going to make money from this? How is this directly going to be profitable? Juliet and I said, hey, we'll do this for 6 months and then reevaluate. But it's been pleasantly surprising. I've gotten clients from it. I just filled my Truce with Food program. It sold out. I don't know if I can directly attribute the private clients to the podcast. Mm-hmm. But I don't know so much about the group program yet, but I know that a lot of the people in the group program listen to the podcast, and I have to think that that's something that has helped me being in their ear, right?
You bet.
And to me, coaching is intimacy, right? That's what underneath it is I'm selling. And to me, podcasting is super intimate. You are in someone's ear. You're listening to them. You're learning things about them that is very intimate in a way that can only come up in extended conversations. So that was some of the business rationale, but I wish I could say it was like better strategically thought out. But I was kind of even surprised to get private clients from it, to be honest.
You strike a chord because there's so many that say the same thing that a lot of people think, well, we're going to start a podcast. We've got to get all technical here. We've got to get a business plan in place, and we've got to make sure everything's just perfect before we launch. And we've got all this work to do. And whereas so many podcasts really actually seem to just be started because of a spark of an idea, and they kind of just dig in and get going with a little bit of organization, but not nearly to the level that a lot of people think. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the big thing for me is what part of my coaching model is based on narrative coaching. So it's really the beliefs that drive us to feel emotionally vulnerable, and then we eat, or then we say, the hell with it, right? Like, I'll focus on this tomorrow.
You're killing me.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so it's about the food, but it's not about the food. But in studying narrative coaching, I realized that, we want to say to the media, it's the media is giving us this, it's giving us that, but it's also the stories we don't hear that affect us equally. And I was really big on we need a new conversation. And that hunch paid off. Part of what helped our podcast grow is people saying, no one's talking about this. I've never heard of this. How do I not know about this? And there's, part of when you're locked into calories in, calories out, you tend to focus on that type of information. But I think part of the resonance and what I had a hunch would be more powerful than the production value and all that stuff was no one was talking about this stuff. No one was talking about, I always say, in traditional weight loss, people are like, you just don't want it bad enough. And I'm like, no, my clients want it really badly. What's stopping them? And a lot of people just don't know where to look in the health and wellness field. So I think people, a lot of the feedback we get is, it just sounds like you and Juliet are we're having a conversation with you. People are listening to us in their bathtub. They're listening to us when they cook. These places, because I think it's almost the informality, the informalness of it that people appreciate, because so many people come with this all high and mighty approach to at least health and weight loss. Even fitness models getting plastic surgery and not drinking water so that they can have their abs look different. I think people feel like our podcast is very real. And Juliet and I both have the personal experience of working through food issues, but we're also no, this is going to be challenging. Like you can't do this in 30 days.
Yeah.
So I think people are ready for that, or they've been ready for that and they just didn't know it and didn't have the outlet for it.
So why do you have such a passion for health?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, part of it is, to me, because I struggled with my health. I mean, oddly enough, I didn't realize how much I struggled. I had normalized all of these symptoms as something that you just deal with, and your body isn't, the body doesn't work. So to me, if you don't have your health, it's really hard to enjoy everything else. Health isn't the destination. It's the process to really feeling alive. But I feel like we're in this really interesting point in time where, all of the systems, of the structures of whether it's government, healthcare, education, prison, like criminal justice, we're realizing everything comes up short, right? There's a huge issue. The people who have been curating information, we're finding out they all have agendas, very profit motive. And so what I think gives me the most passion, and health is just the vehicle, but for people reclaiming agency in their lives, for them realizing, whoa, the doctor is not, the principal. It's not the government. Like we put these people in these authority figures, and we say they know what's best. And when you really start to realize that health does not happen in your doctor's office, it happens when you're getting sleep. It happens at your farmer's market. It happens when you go into the woods and hike. There's an empowerment and a sense of agency that you then start to say, what else am I believing that wasn't true? I always use the analogy, the metaphor, when people stop eating prepackaged foods, they stop wanting a prepackaged life. And they start to think, what else have I been, swallowing whole that isn't necessarily true? And I don't think of myself as a rebel. Like I always got good. I'm like the good girl rebel, like I always got good grades. Like I never did anything. And I call emotional eating the good girl and good guy, disease. Cause you're not shoplifting. I'm not doing drugs. Like, it's like, no, this is socially acceptable.
Just eat it. My face. It's fine.
Right. So I really, on a deep level, I want those of us who have a sensitivity and who have been felt held back because they feel almost like outsiders in a way. No, we need your voice. And so it's really the agency. And to me, I don't even think of health anymore as if you have a disease or a diagnosis anymore. But I want to know, are you alive? Are you full of vitality? And that includes resilience. Can you roll with the punches? Can you go after things and take the hits, whatever they are, running a business, whether, a lot of my clients are in traditional work environments, but they're doing really, quote, radical or different things in education, in healthcare. I have a lot of doctors who are clients, so they're doing things that are pioneering. And I want them to have the maximum amount of agency and know how much control you have. Because again, I thought I was being healthy. Like I had cancer. I had all these issues. I was like, I know what I'm doing. And I had no idea the depths of what I didn't know. Yep. So that's where a lot of my passion comes from, is the agency.
It is funny how you normalize things. Like I myself had digestive issues for years and years. For about 20 years I was sick. And you think it's a normal thing to have to know where a toilet is wherever you go, and to be sick all the time every time you eat. You're like, oh no, I'm fine. This is just how my body is. But that's really not the case. So I think your topic is really great, and it's great that you're helping so many people out with the same type of issues. Now I just want to switch the conversation a little bit to focus back on the podcast and actually the format of your show. I noticed that you have a few different formats. We're seeing this a lot with podcasters. Is some people do the hosting all on their own. It's just a one-sided podcast. They talk. It's not really a conversation. They speak at their audience. Some of them have a co-host, which you also do, Juliet, which is more of a conversation, and then also having guests on. So if you'd like to share with our audience what your typical format is, how you deal with bringing guests on and things like that, show length, those type of things.
Yeah, so the show averages about an hour. We did go over a little bit one time, like an hour and 10 minutes. And generally what we've been doing, again, we're kind of just seeing how things go and what resonates the most with the people who are listening. But we generally have a topic that either so Juliet owns a franchise gym called Unite. So she sees our listeners every day, which in the beginning, I get emails from people, but she sees them every day. And so based on, people will send me questions or like, oh, I wish you would have gone in further on that, into detail on that one. We had someone email us say, you guys talk about emotional eating, but how do I even know if I'm emotionally eating? And so we're like, okay, that's a great topic. I mean, we could do, a podcast just on that in a time. So the topics really, we want to come from the community. We really want to build a community around this because it's the community as a tool in working through your health challenges. If you feel like you have people who understand you, there's a huge sense of safety there. And a lot of times we overeat or we don't take care of our health when we feel that lack of safety, that vulnerability I mentioned. So we really want to use the topic agendas as part of a tool to build the community. When it comes to who to have on, right now we've just been reaching out to people that we know. A lot of my friends have books coming out, so we'll have them on. My one friend was on, she's a trainer. She was on that show, My Diet is Better Than Yours. I don't know if you saw it. It was on
Oh,
ABC.
I heard about that. Yeah, I've been wanting.
Yeah. So the funny thing is I've also realized, kind of thinking more strategically, business sense, that this is a great way to stay in touch with your contacts. I have a ton of contacts. I've been doing this for 10 years, but I've never, you see them on social media or whatnot. But I'm like, wow, I actually know a lot of people.
Yeah, you're just waiting to do something with them, right?
Yeah. So and people, and it's funny because, people come on, they're like, this was so fun. And I'm like, I know, because we all, especially, I think the cool thing is the way that Juliet and I approach health is we know a lot of really qualified people who don't often get the time that they want to share all that they know either, right? Like they have this depth of expertise that they're doing media that gives you, when you do TV, you have 4 minutes and you have to hit it and get out. And then you have to talk about your props for half the time. That's how we've been doing it so far. It's been kind of ad hoc, but kind of a mix of what we think people will care about. And then another challenge is often people don't know what they don't know. So last week we did an episode on how the gut biome negates calories.
Yeah, I was just listening to that.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of people, they've heard the gut biome, they understand, they take probiotics, but they don't really understand the whole magnitude of it and that it basically negates everything we know about wellness. Not necessarily sickness, but it totally turns everything on its head. So we made a title like how the gut biome negates calories, because I don't think people would have been able to put that together unless they had the background that I, especially with functional medicine, and Juliet has some from her own personal experience. But so it's kind of that mix.
And you also brought up another great point, that it gives you the ability to stay in touch with contacts. And really build out, I guess, and I'm throwing this in, and build out your network. Could you talk to that a little bit, how important that is and the types of people that it puts you in touch with when you have a podcast that gives you the ability to do an interview?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you asked that question because there's a ton of health coaches out there. There's a ton of health experts. But I felt very isolated because of the approach that I take. I health coach very differently. I bring functional medicine to it. I have highly trained coaching background, which you don't necessarily need, but in combination with doing it for a while, I've often felt like I can't relate to a lot of the way that people approach, just the dogma alone, right? Like some people will be like, I'm going to teach you how to be vegetarian, or I'm going to teach you how to be paleo. And I'm like, oh, it just doesn't feel good. So I felt very isolated in my industry, or for lack of a better term, there's the sick. I call the U.S. healthcare system sick care, and then there's and then there's wellness. And wellness is like this wild, wild west. And everyone has different training, everyone has different background, because we don't know. There isn't a standard yet for what works. So I understand why it's the levels change so much of how people are approaching things, right? Like it's not necessarily people's fault. It's how they're approaching it. So it hasn't been until like the last year that I've really found a lot of people that resonate with my outlook of we are all individual. It is emotional. You have to look at, a whole systems, a whole body approach. So with that lens, now I can target who I really want to interview. And so that's been, the podcast is only 3 months old, so I think that will help to further fine tune who I want to be in my network, and force me to do the legwork to figure out who else is out there. Because for a while I was just like, I'm all alone, I can't relate to anybody. But one person leads to another, who leads to another. I know this sounds, and maybe you guys can relate, but I have some friends who they're colleagues, and I really respect the work they're doing. But then I don't really know who they know. Like, it's not what I'm not like, oh, who do you know? I'm like, hey, how's it going? And you're chatting personal stuff. But now I can be more, I guess, think to even ask them, hey, who else do you know that would be a good guest and help expand my network? Whereas before I wouldn't have even thought to ask them, like, who do you know? I know that sounds weird, but it wouldn't have crossed my mind.
No, it makes perfect sense. I see we're actually up against a very short break here. When we return, we'll talk about the exact steps Ali took to launch and grow her podcast, so don't go away.
More Podcasting Mastery with James and Kimberly from the Secret Beach Hut Studio after this.
Is your website out of date? Is it mobile friendly? Why not let us design your website, and we'll make sure it looks the way it should on all platforms and devices, including iPhones, iPads, and other smartphones and tablets. We'll even optimize your site for search engines and make it easy for you to share your content and products on social sites such as Facebook and Twitter with built-in sharing features. For more information and to schedule your no-obligation free consultation, go to podcastingmastery.com/website. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/website.
Would you love to spend less time doing business and more time enjoying your family, more time traveling, and more time doing all of the things that matter to you most? Whether you're looking to develop a passive monthly income stream, or you're looking for passive ways of generating new clients and customers for your business, James Martell's free podcasting webinar is the place to start. James Martell, an 11-year podcasting veteran, will show you how to quickly and easily launch a podcast that will impress all who hear it to attract all of the clients and customers you need, and how to do it all in less than 1 hour a week using equipment you already own. Register now for this lifestyle and business-changing webinar at podcastingmastery.com/webinar. We'll see you there. Once again, that's www.podcastingmastery.com/webinar. Now back to Podcasting Mastery from the Secret Beach Hut Studio.
Yes, we are back, and I'm here with my co-host Kimberly Juchnowski and Ali Shapiro, host of the Insatiable Podcast. Let's talk about a little bit about how you find working with your co-host Juliet.
Yeah, so that was something. I feel like I'm starting to sound like a control freak, but I was a little bit worried about collaborating, especially with someone who I am so close with, because inevitably you're going to have differences of opinion, right? There's a lot in a partnership, especially one that is eventually hopefully going to make money, right? You can't just be all nice all the time. But in truth, so far, it's been really great. I love the back and forth. She and I have very different approaches. She's very tactical and down to earth. I think I am too, but I bring more of a. She was joking that I'm forgetting the duo, but she's like, you'd be Dr. Drew and I'd be who was Dr. Drew's partner, who was like always being funny. And I don't know if you even know the reference I'm talking about, but do you know the reference?
I do, but I can't get it. I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue, but.
Yeah, I didn't even know who it was. She was the one who was like, oh, you'll be Dr. Drew. And then I'll be like, come back down to earth, Ali, you know? So it's been great. So we have very different, and what's also really great is the gym that she works at, Unite Fitness, which is a franchise gym. I mean, they work out with people who are hardcore training. Like, she's really into, like, that's her audience, and my audience is very different. And that, I mean, they like to exercise, but they're not competing for triathletes and, you know, all that stuff. So we have those very different perspectives. So that's been really great. I think the big challenge is we both are running she's running a franchise, I'm running my own business. And so right now, like even today, we were like, okay, we're splitting up the social media cards. We probably should talk about having a consistent look and feel, you know, like, and it's like, when are we going to get to that? So I think that's the challenge, is just neither of us come from a podcast. I mean, does anyone have a podcasting background? Or I mean, like, we just don't know what we don't know. So there's a huge learning curve, but overall, we both really enjoy it a lot. And we both, because, I mean, I know that we both work a lot. And so it's so wonderful. The podcasting almost feels like fun time. Like I don't even though it's part of my business, it doesn't feel like, when you have to like do your quarterly taxes or you have to like, why are my links broken on my website? Like it's not that kind of admin-y stuff. And we do have someone edit it for us. So we did agree with that up front. I was like, look, I do not want to learn GarageBand. I don't have the time. And she's like, either do I. So we do split those costs, which makes it a lot more fun.
Good.
Outsourcing is definitely a good idea. So what was your strategy in launching and building an audience?
Yeah. So the good thing is, Juliet has been a trainer for probably 10 years. And I've been health coaching, for about 10 years. And so we both have pretty solid lists and, very engaged lists. I don't have like the 100,000 people, but the people on my list, I have a high open rate. I have a lot of people who open every email, and Juliet had a huge list, because they have multiple gyms. And so when we launched, we really just let those people know about it. And it was enough that we got a new and noteworthy. And now they've been sharing it. I think that's another, and now that I'm thinking about the marketing perspective, one of the challenges I've always had is people on social media aren't going to be like, Ali, help me with my food issues. Woo! Like that's not something you share on social media. I've since learned, I'm like not a social media pro, but I've learned from people who are like, no, people share things on social media that affirm how they see themselves. And so I was like, oh, that's so interesting. They don't share what's interesting, what's moving. I've had people write back to me like, your newsletter made me cry. This is amazing. Like, but they don't share it. Right. And I was like, okay. But with the podcast, we make these quote cards, right? And I was like, this is something people can share. And this is something people can share without shame. It's something that people can share proudly. And also because we really do want to educate, it makes them feel like, I know what I'm talking about as well. So that was kind of also something I thought of in the strategy. Strategy meaning like, this is what we're trying. I don't know if it's going to work. But that mindset shift, when I learned that that's what social media was about, was like, oh, the podcast, we can grow this on social media because it's really easy to share. And so part of our launch strategy, what I realized in the past couple of weeks is if we pull out a couple key quotes from the podcast and put it on a card, like you go in Canva and make a social media card.
Yeah.
That gets so many more clicks than just saying, hey, this week we have Dr. Kelly Brogan on, a holistic psychiatrist with her new book out. If I pull out specific quotes, she had this quote about, everything that we've learned about the gut biome, like changes everything we know about psychiatry. And like, we can no longer say depression is a chemical imbalance. And so people see that, and there's something about that quote that I looked at, like the clicks. It was like over 100, like in a couple of hours. Whereas I don't know if we've ever gotten before a lot of engagement with. We're just now starting to track, like what gets clicked through on social media and everything. But that's a pretty high number for us to get like over 100 clicks within like a couple hours.
You bet, and that's a brilliant little tip.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Could you expand upon that a little bit? The quote cards and the service you use. I think you mentioned Canva.
Yeah, so Canva's free, and it's this tricky thing where you don't need a graphic designer. And every time I make a quote card, I'm like, some graphic designer is like cringing when they see this. I'm not a graphic designer, but so Canva's free, but it gives you enough of a template and images and free cards. You can go on there and say, are you sharing this on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, and it automatically sizes it for you. Which that's the stuff that like stresses me out. And then what we do is Juliet and I, after we every other episode, we basically split it down the middle, and we do get transcripts as part of our service. And we go through and we just look for a couple key quotes that, what would make you be like, whoa, what would pop that out, make you want to click. And so like we ask ourselves that, like what here is interesting. And so then we pull those out, and I go in Canva and I just plop in the quote, and then I put, episode 12 of Insatiable, and I put on iTunes or alishapiro.com/podcast, which is the link on my page for the podcast. And then we just post it to Twitter, I'm having my VA post it 3 times a day because people are on at different times. I post on Instagram. I was just thinking this morning how, like, I don't know if that's appropriate for Instagram, but I don't have enough followers for it to matter yet. And then we share it on our personal Facebook and business pages as well. And then what I'm also going to be doing is, one thing that's interesting is I was speaking, and this is another tip for podcasters, like, you have to reiterate like 100 times that to get people to subscribe and that there's more. I was talking to my best friend this weekend over a text message, and she really enjoyed our first couple of podcasts. And I was like, hey, are you still listening? I'm just curious. Like, be honest with me. I'm just trying to get, listener feedback. And she's like, honestly, I didn't know that you were producing anymore. And I was like, oh my God, because again, my clients they're not entrepreneurs and not heavily involved in the internet online world. So it's like, they don't know that this comes out every week. Like, and a lot of my listeners and my clients who listen, they're only listening to podcasts because I introduced it to them. So if you have that kind of audience, you have to tell them several times, like, subscribe. It comes out every week, or there's a transcript if you don't want to like listen to audio. But I think that's something that I'm learning. Because if you listen to podcasts, you're very familiar with the process, the routine. But reminding people that, hey, there's a new one every week. So what I'm also doing is using those quote cards or the quotes that I pull. I'm now weaving them into the post that goes out to my list every week to just kind of like as a callback. Next week I'm going to talk about the gut biome and how, I have a client I'm wrapping up with. She's lost 10 pounds because we got her digestive tract on, she's pooping regularly. And like, that's the measurement. I mean, I hope I'm allowed to say that on your podcast.
No, it's great.
I think you're the first.
It is important. So
I know I get so comfortable with things that like gross other people out. I'm like, I talk about this all the time.
I think women talk about that more than men, actually. So.
Yeah, I'm blushing.
But then I had another client who I'd worked with like a year ago who she emailed me. She's like, I just went on like 2 rounds of antibiotics and I've gained a couple pounds. Is that from the antibiotics? And I was like, it could be, because she's like, my stomach's raw. I'm craving carbs. And so what I'm going to do is like talk about this in a post, but then give a callback to the podcast that we did on the gut microbiome. And then also bring in Dr. Kelly Brogan's quote about how, basically the gut microbiome transforms everything we know about medicine. So that way it's reminding them a couple of times. So the quotes once you pull them out, you can use them in multiple ways.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. Brilliant. And I'm also, by the way, I'm going to steal one of your new words. Admini stuff. Admini stuff. I love that. That's a good one.
Makes my skin crawl. I hate eating.
You also mentioned another really good point, is that you have existing clients and existing lists. And in the marketing world, we all know that it's way easier to sell more to an existing client. Yet, many of us, especially those without podcasts or an email list, have a tendency to ignore them, and they spend a lot more time looking for new clients rather than catering to their existing clients. How's it gone for you, being able to reach out more often to existing clients with your podcast?
I think it's amazing because also, what I teach in Truce with Food and the skill set at the heart of what I teach my clients is learning how to learn better. And so that's a spiral staircase. I call health and wellness a spiral staircase. I use that metaphor. I'm like, you never arrive. You're always, the body changes. You're looking at your beliefs and your stories from a different angle. And so for me, it's been a really great way for them. Like I had one client who wanted to take Truce with Food. She had taken it before, but couldn't take it this round. And she's like, but I feel like the podcasts are help filling in until I can get to it, so I can take it again in September, because Truce with Food is twice a year. And I was like, that's wonderful, because I don't want her to stall her progress just because she can't do the program. And I'm also really confident that once someone works with me, I don't know, is this egotistical, but like, I know they're not going to go back. You can't.
Not at all. It's crazy.
Once you see things a certain way, you can't unknow them for better or for worse. And even though I run a business, I really think I'm this hybrid of like social entrepreneurship. Like I joke with my VA. I'm like, really, if I could do it my own way, I'd work at a university. If there was a university that just let me do my own thing and I didn't have to publish, and I would do this and just not give it away for free, because people need some skin in the game. But like, this to me is really like about social, like it's really about social entrepreneurship more than just to profit. So I really want my client. I love my clients. They're amazing people. And I know they're trying so hard, and they also have 1,000 other competing commitments. So the podcast to me enables them to, to continue progress. Like, for example, so we did this episode on emotional eating, the four habits of emotional eating. And I was talking about how one of them is when people are switch tasks. So oftentimes people will just grab something and they don't know they don't recognize that the pattern is, oh my God, it's because I'm switching tasks. Like, I'm driving so hard, and then it's like, oh, I need energy, or I need a reward, or whatever it is. And, a couple of clients were like, oh my God, I totally forgot that we had talked about that. And then I do that. And so it was just this reminder of, oh God, that's what I'm doing. And again, once you can see your pattern, then you have distance and you have a choice rather than being controlled by it. So it reinforces the work that we do. And I feel like it's giving value over and over again, which is ultimately what's really important to me.
So if you found the time machine and could go back and start all over, what is it that you would do differently with the podcast?
I would have started the day that I quit my corporate job.
That's a common answer. Why didn't I do this earlier?
I know. My husband was just saying to me yesterday, he's like, I did tell you 3 years ago to do this. Like, and I was like, no, I know, but I was in so I had this weird but I was also in grad school the same time I was running working for myself. I don't really think of myself as running a business until the past couple of years, but because I was just really doing one-on-one stuff for a long time because I was in grad school as well. But yeah, I think the podcast, also, we can say that, but it seems like Serial, really helped people get more into podcasting and more attention on podcasting. So I also don't know, if most of my clients, I'm just introducing them to podcasting, would it have flown? I don't know. Is it the right time? So I also, the coach in me is like, well, let's not make any assumptions. But yeah, I think that it would have been definitely starting sooner. For sure. That's the definite thing.
Great advice. Let's shift gears for a moment if we can. I've got the speed round and 10 really quick questions for you, and you have no idea what they are, which always makes it fun.
Yeah.
So, and we have a board for this first one, and last week we actually won. So, number 1, Windows or Mac?
Oh, Mac.
It's happening again.
My phone isn't an iPhone.
That was my next question. iPhone or Android?
Android.
Really?
Well, because my iPhone broke, and I was not going to pay $600 for a new one. So, and I don't know, to my husband's point, I don't even know how to use my phone. So I'm on a Moto. So I think that's Android.
Cat or dog person?
Neither.
That's 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be a closeted, I'm not anti-dog, but I feel like if you tell people you're not a dog person, it's like, dogs are all the rage these days.
They don't trust you or something.
I know. People are like, you're such a hippie. I thought you would love them all.
What's your favorite book?
Oh, do I have to pick one?
Yep.
If this is a speed round, I think it'll have to be the book that I just finished. It's by Parker Palmer, and it's called Let Your Life Speak.
Number 5, your favorite vacation spot and why?
No matter where my husband and I go, we read and talk about what we're reading. So I think it would have to, I love the beach and the mountains. Do you mean a specific location?
Yeah, that would be nice.
I think the most memorable vacation recently was definitely Boulder. I love the mountains there. I just love it there. That would probably be if I could go anywhere right now.
So I think I probably know the answer to this one. The mini stuff kind of gives me a clue. Are you a techie or a non-techie?
Oh, non-techie. Nice. I'm a one-hit wonder. Wellness or bust.
All right, Coach. What is your favorite success quote?
Oh, my favorite. You mean like in the ether?
Sure.
So I'm a big truth is a big value for me. So I don't think would be a traditional success quote, but I love the quote by Raina Marie Rilke, who talks about living the questions themselves, and one day you can live into the answer.
Interesting.
Very
yeah. says love the questions, like they're books in a library or something along those lines.
What's a tool you use every day that you would absolutely hate to live without?
Oh, online tool?
Well, maybe not. Any type of tool.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be my laptop. I don't know how I would work without that.
Number 9, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I'm not a very fun person. No.
I don't believe you.
Well, I love great, deep conversations. And so that's like whenever I can link up with people who can have those, who are curious and have those, that is so fun to me. I love learning. So anything involved with learning and deep questions.
And then finally, this is a deeper question. Number 10, the final one. What's the most rewarding thing that you've been able to do for someone because of your podcast?
Great question.
Maybe somebody giving you great feedback, telling you about a life-changing experience.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten so much great feedback, and I think the best way to sum it up is that people have hope now. They thought that they only had, eat less, work out more. They thought that was the only narrative, and now they're realizing there's this whole new world out there. So to me, if you can give people hope and like practical hope, not magical thinking, but practical hope, that is so rewarding.
So, Ali, please take a moment and share where our podcasting friends can learn more about your podcast, of course, your coaching programs, and tell us a little bit more about when your book's going to be due.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I'm just working on the proposal now, so hopefully it'll be out next year. But I'm sure I'll be sharing with my list, and getting feedback and not beta testing, but, seeing how things resonate. Mm-hmm. So people can find me. My podcast is Ali Shapiro, AliShapiro.com/podcast. Or you can find it in iTunes, it's Insatiable is the name of the podcast. And then also you can hop on my list, and there's a free 3-day clean eating reboot. So it's amazing what you can do if you just eat clean. You don't need to do cleanses or detox. You can do something just very moderate and get radical results. So you can get that at AliShapiro.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any final thoughts or words of encouragement for other podcasters who are on the journey themselves?
Yeah, I think for people who haven't started, just try it. Like you don't have to stick with it, but you're going to love it. And I think it's only going to grow. I mean, you guys probably know the stats more, but it's like 3% of media. I think it's going to be so much higher as people crave. I think people are really craving depth in their information these days. They
are. And as you said earlier, they are so personal when you get a chance to really talk to somebody in their ear. Such a great way to build relationships. Ali, thank you so much for sharing your personal story and being so generous in sharing your health advice and also your podcasting knowledge and experiences. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you.
And to all our podcasting friends, a reminder, if you have your own podcast or a podcasting tool that you would like us to feature here on the show, simply send us the details to feature me at podcastingmastery.com, and we may do exactly that.
And if you're wondering what it takes to develop a profitable podcast of your own, I have put together a special report for you based on my 12 years of podcasting called The Core Elements of the No Fail Podcast. And you can download that for free at podcastingmastery.com/no fail.
If there's something here we mentioned that you missed, keep in mind we do keep all the show notes for you, including links to the Insatiable Podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode at podcastingmastery.com/PM020.
Kimberly, thank you so much. Ali, you were wonderful. And to all of our podcasting friends, we'll catch you on the next episode of Podcasting Mastery.
Thanks for joining us in the Secret Beach Hut studio. If you are ready to start your podcasting adventure and to learn the secrets of creating a profitable podcast, James Martell has boiled it down for you to the 12 core elements of the No Fail Podcast in his most recent free report. Available for a limited time at podcastingmastery.com/no fail. But don't wait, this report won't be free for long. So be sure to grab your free copy today to learn the secrets of podcasting your way to a stress-free lifestyle at podcastingmastery.com/no fail.